Our guests in this segment, one via telephone, one in person, Daniel Bennett. You may remember Daniel from running for office locally a few years back. Daniel, good morning. Welcome back to the program.
Good morning, Rob.
How was your holiday break there, sir? Christmas
lovely,
and such?
Lovely.
Very nice. You have been heavily involved in homeowners associations since you ran for office.
That's correct.
Before we bring in Kathy, tell us about your involvement in the most recent development with that.
Sure. After having run and gone through quite a bit of Berkeley County, I realized that we needed some representation down in Charleston, and so I started Homeowners Voice, and we have successfully introduced two pieces of legislation. We gave testimony before a joint committee of the state legislature down. It wasn't in Charleston, but those folks. And we realized that there was a missing component. And so we are very happy to announce, and that's why I'm here, the announced beginning of the state chapter of CAI, the Community Associations Institute, which is a national, the gold standard for representing HOAs. And we did not realize that was not really in process, and so we worked with them, and we are now been accepted to start the chapter here in West Virginia finally. Very
good. And you want to introduce Kathy Knight? She's with us via telephone. We don't have a picture or photo of Kathy, so we'll just have our group of four as we talk and introduce Kathy. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us, Kathy.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. And in lieu of a picture, just picture me as I was in my young 20s and about a size 8, blonde hair, blue eyes. You got it. That will work.
That's marvelous.
Anyway, thank you so much for bringing us on. And Daniel was introducing what we're up to. And I will should I hand it back to him?
No, you can keep talking. Point? Tell us a little bit more about CAI West Virginia.
Okay. CAI West Virginia. If you go on to Community Association Institute and you look at the map for chapters, and Daniel should have a handout there to just show it to you on the spot, you'll notice that the entire eastern seaboard, from Maine to Florida, up from Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, anything that surrounds us in any shape or format by, a couple hundred miles at least or more, on any border of us has a state chapter. And a state chapter is basically the liaison to the national and works in partnership with CAI National. And we have just been thrilled beyond belief to basically take that over. That goal was a long-term goal of WVOHOAs. And this last year in 2024, they put in writing basically that their goal had changed. And we have this whole paper trail, which he can show you if you would like to see it, to validate that of which we speak. Anyway, they forfeited the opportunity to basically pursue that long-term goal, which would have been in the best of West Virginia's interest. And it is a lot of work. It's hard work. And we're spending countless hours because CAI, once they realized that WVOHOA was no longer interested and could not fulfill their obligation that they were originally developed for, it came over to us, so we fill that void. And CAI in November the 21st, basically wrote this wonderful letter over to WVOHOA. And basically, the letter just talks about, we're telling you about a new development in our state. A group of CAI members in West Virginia are petitioning the CAI Board of Trustees to incorporate as an official CIA chapter.
So here's my setup on this first, and then I'll get to the question, if Kathy and Daniel. I live in Maryland, and I'm the president of the Homeowners Association where I live. There was a story I read recently on a business website, CNBC, and it talked about Florida, and they were discussing the effect that the hurricane season has had on the condos in Florida. And the residents of these condos are being hit with the fees for repairs for the neighborhoods. And we're not talking about a $1,000 assessment. We're talking about tens and tens of thousands of dollars of assessments that are being levied on these homeowners, enough to make a dog howl. Right. In the background. So,
are you hearing that?
so they're talking about people putting their condos up for sale in mass, which is going to they're fearing is going to create a whole housing issue in Florida as a result of that. So, I know from my job as president of the association, you have a fiscal responsibility to make sure the association is solvent. In a situation like they're going through in Florida, the way they're going to try to solve their solvency issues is by a massive hit on the residents. In West Virginia, the homeowners associations are responsible for the roads, which is a very large tab. Who's making sure that these homeowners associations are collecting enough in dues to account for the repairs that are going to have to be made when these roads need to be repaired, so that someone who just moves into that neighborhood doesn't suddenly get a $25,000 assessment for road repair because it's been ignored for 25 years while the neighborhood wasn't collecting enough dues? And will what you're doing with CAI West Virginia help ensure that that doesn't happen to someone who moves newly into a neighborhood?
I think that is a great point, because what we have seen is sort of the Wild West here. There was one example of a community that had a bridge, and that bridge was deemed unsafe, so that the emergency first responders, fire department, ambulances said they're not going to cross it, and it was a responsibility of that HOA who let that go, and so those people are in danger. There are cases where
and their homeowners insurance is going to get canceled.
Well, funny you should say that. Here in West Virginia, you're not even required to formally register with the Secretary of State, so we don't even know where all of them are. That was one of the things we were working on and will continue to work on as a state chapter. And furthermore, the Maryland folks and the Virginia folks and all those other places, they have a voice in Charleston, a major voice. And they will change it so that there are requirements for insurance. Right now, there's no requirement. I mean, there may be legal requirements, but to protect yourself if you have a mortgage. But there are lots of HOAs, we believe, that don't have master insurance policies to protect them. They might have directors and officers, but they may not have the master insurance policy. So if something does happen on one of their roads, they have a problem. They may not have a reserve fund because it's not required to have a reserve fund here in West Virginia. You might just have a bank account. And worst of all, if you have a problem with your HOA, the only way to deal with it here in West Virginia, as far as we're aware, is through what's called private action, meaning you got to hire a lawyer for a lot of money. And good luck finding one that will do that work. So, and if you call up the West Virginia Attorney General's office, they're precluded in part by law from even looking into these cases where there's a rogue president who won't show the financials to the rest of the board. This is happening. And so we hope with CAI coming officially to West Virginia and having a state chapter, and what will happen is they create legislative action committees in all their states. And in Maryland, I've seen them, and they had hundreds of people, and they go and look at every single piece of legislation. But here in West Virginia, we've had none of that. And so there hasn't been a new law, as far as we know, in 30 years about this.
Maria.
Do folks understand when they move in to a subdivision or what have you, that there is this cost associated with being part of a homeowners association? And how do associations, maybe I should ask Rob this, mandate that folks pay their dues.
Well, I'll set it up for Kathy, but just on terms of the dues, it's up for the HOA to enforce it, and they can impose liens and things like that. So they have that legal power. Mm-hmm. But if things go badly at that HOA, there's a big problem. And Kathy, you want to talk about what it's like for a realtor selling a home, what they have to go through here to give due diligence to the buyer?
Oh, absolutely. As a former accredited buyer's rep and graduate real estate agent, I will attest to there are times that brokers are literally going from house to house, knocking on doors, trying to find what they think might be a board member to verify, are they an HOA? Are they not an HOA? Have documents ever been filed? And because they've gotten no response to their request of the resale certificate, which is on the regional contract now in West Virginia, and you get to accept or decline. But it is not a requirement as it is in a lot of other states. Coming from Maryland, you have a lot of protection with the way everything's set up for HOA members under the Maryland umbrella. Unfortunately, that wouldn't work for West Virginia because it's really big, very cumbersome, and the general train of thought would not support that here. But it's really interesting to be a realtor in a state where you don't even know how many HOAs you have, where they're located, are they dead or alive. So you've got to just do your due diligence and do your best to find out, does anybody think they're an HOA? Has anybody ever talked to the Secretary of State? And by the way, if you think that the county commissioners would be any help with that, the answer would be no. They don't track that in a database. The assessor doesn't track that in the database. The county clerk doesn't track that in the database. There is no database. And on the subject of the county commissioners, we tell these folks, please govern this county. And then we say, oh, but excuse us, please. We don't want you, like I live in Tucker. They don't govern Timberline. And I'm the president of Women Homeowners Association. I didn't show up at the annual they voted me in. Yes, everybody can laugh right now. Anyway.
No, I know how it works. Trust me.
Yeah, it happens, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
And yes, it does. And we're telling them it's like a puzzle with all these pieces missing. There we go. Mm-hmm. And we are trying to say, oh, gosh, look, we only have two kinds of roads in this state. We have state roads, and we have private. And other states aren't like that.
Right.
And then you get into a real mess when the state road blends into the private road, which is exactly the case we have in Wynwood. So it's really tough being a realtor and trying to do due diligence on what is an HOA because nobody knows. Where are the HOAs? Are they alive? And I had an incident where I was wandering around, had a house to list, etc. And they apparently had filed paperwork at some point with the county clerk. The body did not realize paperwork had been filed. What does one do in a case like this? And this is part of, there's never been a chapter in the state of West Virginia. And because of that, there's that piece, that connection, that liaison, if you will, is absent from the whole conduit of information flowing and help flowing, etc. And one of the things that is very problematic on the way of HOAs, particularly in the state of West Virginia, they are not a municipality. they are an HOA. So the Attorney General, if you call up and you say, I have a problem with my HOA, they will tell you, gosh, we're really sorry. And then if you start crying, like happened on a couple of phone calls to the Attorney General's office, they'll feel bad for you, and they'll give you over to our group for basically hand-holding. And we do what we can. But because we don't have a chapter, we can plug them into CAI National, but there's no resident expert because they don't have a chapter.
Kathy, let me jump in here real quick, because Bill Stubblefield was the Berkeley County Commission president a few years back. Bill, how did you deal with homeowners associations in Berkeley County at that time?
Not well, and we did it with a the loudest voice, which is only one or two people that had a real concern. By and large, we did not hear from the Homeowners Association. It was a opaque area with one or two exceptions. I have a couple of questions. One, Dan, you have appeared with us several times now and have always raised legitimate issues. I have never had a follow-up to see how the legislators have been listening to you, if they have been listening to you all. The second part of that question is, can we paint the whole state with the same brush as we have in the Eastern Panhandle, where we're having phenomenal growth? HOAs are very much of a foundation of what we're doing, but a lot of the state, there's not this growth. Or is it a problem? Do we have a problem? And I'm not condemning, say we do or do not. I just don't know.
I appreciate that opportunity to tell you that we have a fantastic relationship with state agencies. We have been meeting with the state attorney general to talk about the issues with whether or not they can talk to the HOAs that have gone rogue or doing things that might be fraudulent. We've been talking to the state auditor's office. We've been speaking to the governor's office. We have spoken, and matter of fact, Senator Jason Barrett introduced legislation last time. Excuse me. And so we have met with almost every single senator, state senator, and delegate. And we have a fantastic, and that's why they asked us to come and speak at the joint committee about these issues. So, and they were astounded when we told them that the Secretary of State, an office we worked with to get that legislation crafted, that HOAs didn't have to register here in the state of West Virginia. They were astounded. They were like, "No, that can't be true." And it's like, I wish you were right. And afterwards, the delegate who had brought that worry, you're telling us that it's not the case, called up the Secretary of State and found out directly, yep, that's true. Here in West Virginia, there's really no oversight except private action.
So is the primary focus of HOAs road clearance on times like this? Is there some other function that falls in with what an HOA can do besides the roads? Garbage
pickup.
Yeah, no, all of these are possibilities. And Kathy was talking about they serve as sort of a pseudo or type of municipality, and that's incredible. And matter of fact, this morning, Damon Wright, who's well-known local, put in Facebook, hey, is part of the reason why they're not having school today because some of these HOAs haven't done their job? Honestly, we don't know. It's a huge problem.
That's the problem.
It's a huge problem, and I think that this is you'd be surprised. Kathy's from Tucker, and they have growth. We have a lot of places, because we're a tourist place, where HOAs or condo boards form. You'd be surprised how much of the state has them. And if we had better rules and had a better voice in Charleston and in the various counties, I think we could get our hands around it a little bit better. I don't think that you need a master insurance policy, whether in your Eastern Panhandle or Kanawha or anywhere
Yeah,
else.
specifically, what are you asking for, Dan?
First thing is we found out that without a state chapter, it's hard to get things done.
But you have a state chapter now.
We just hit the ground running, and that's what we're here to announce and to tell people. There's a benefactor, and if you want a free membership for your HOA for this first year, come to us. Send me an email at mail@cai-wv.org, and we'll set you up. But yeah.
Okay, then now that you have a chapter here, what specifically are you going to ask for?
First thing we're going to ask for from CAI is the resources to be able to have a West Virginia specific look at everything. 2, to set up a legislative action committee like they have in all those states. I just pointed out, here in the Eastern Seaboard, everybody but West Virginia has had these legislative action committees that's brought down HOA members to the state legislature to talk about all of these issues and evaluate every single piece of legislation going through. So that's what we have to do first. And then we're going to be talking about reintroducing legislation, like making sure that every HOA does register with the Secretary of State.
You have to hire a private investigator to find all these.
That's for sure.
What are membership dues? You mentioned the first year would be no charge, but what are the annual membership dues for an association to join CAI?
If you are a community leader and not necessarily in an HOA, but even if you are, individual membership is a little over $100, but for an HOA, it's over $300, around $320. We'll do those, and those allow you to have up to 15 individuals in your HOA to have a membership, and they send out lots of stuff, including this bi-monthly magazine, Common Ground, and other resources that are available, trainings on if you're a board member and stuff like that.
We have to do, and I only have a minute left, so what we have to do in my association and in all of Maryland is a reserve study every 5 years to make sure that you have enough money to pay for future repairs, sidewalks, walls, tot lots, whatever. Is there any such requirement in West Virginia for homeowners associations?
Not only is there no requirement, when we've talked to HOA folks, sometimes they say we don't want that level of it, but there should be something at least standard here in West Virginia, I think, and we'll poll people and talk with CAI, that says if you're not going to have a reserve study done every so many years, if you're not going to have a master insurance policy, you make sure that everybody understands what the implications are in your HOA, because there are a lot of people who don't realize that they don't have insurance if something happens on the roads.
Well, and it discourages people from buying the house that's for sale because they might be afraid of getting a $10,000 assessment because all of a sudden the road needs repaired, right?
Amen.
Hey, Kathy, thanks so much for your time this morning. Much appreciated. Great information.
Thank you for having us. Have us back. Okay.
We'll
Talk
do.
soon.
Looking forward to hearing your progress. Daniel, as always, thank you so much for getting in
Thank you,
touch with me about this information.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you.